So this, for example, the fact that you can just continuously pull carrots out of the ground over and over and over again, this is not even remotely realistic. Because like after a while, the carrots won't grow anymore because the nutrients that the carrots need have been pulled out of the ground, and the soil is depleted. And so the crop rotation means that you have to grow different types of crops on that piece of land, one after the other. And it's known, for example, I think, saplings. I think beans, or like legumes, as they call it. I think beans put phosphate back into the soil. I think, if I remember, I'm not I'm not a biology specialist or like a farming specialist. I think, or is it nitrates? Was it phosphates or nitrates? No, nitrates is from poop. Nitrate comes from animal poop, so you need to use animal poop for fertilizer. I think it's phosphate. Anyway, one of the things, one of the nutrients. So you grow beans to put those back, and then you grow other crops that take phosphate out of the soil. So like some plants put phosphate into the soil, some plants pull phosphate out of the soil. And all the plants pull nitrate out of the soil, and then animal poop puts nitrate back into the soil, and so on and so forth. And so you need to kind of get the nutrient cycle running properly in order for things to grow like that. And of course, Minecraft is not anywhere near advanced enough for crop rotation to be a thing in the game. But it could be. I mean, it'll be interesting if you can like test the soil. Like if the soil is not just generic soil, not just generic dirt, but like there's like a nutrient profile in the ground, and you can like probe the ground to see what it has and what it doesn't have. And so chemical fertilizer is just chemical phosphates and chemical nitrates and whatever the hell it is. Like you just kind of put chemicals in the ground, just dump it in the ground and mix it in. And that's like a chemical fertilizer, but you know, poop also does that. So one way or the other, either you use chemicals or you use poop. You gotta put those nitrates back in the soil. One way or the other. In order for the plants to keep growing there, right? And of course, in a natural ecosystem, there'll be animals and birds and things pooping on the ground all the time, like worms pooping. Well, I guess there's worms in farms as well. But you know, like wild animals would poop in the ground, and that would restore the nutrients in the ecosystem. Except that on a farm, you don't want rabbits eating your carrots, and so you keep all the rabbits out of your farm, but then because there are no rabbits pooping in the ground, then it's missing certain nutrients, and so on and so forth. And all of this is very interesting if you're interested in farming. And I mean, and if you play Minecraft as a farming simulator, well, none of this applies. And so like what you're doing is not really farming. What you're doing is just, it's magic. It's really magic, right? Like things just appear. I don't know, because I mean, if games don't have all of this, if people are learning about the world from video games, but the video games don't really represent the world in a way that is anywhere near realistic, then people aren't really learning anything. That's the problem. And I don't know if you're okay with not really learning anything. I mean, I guess if you I mean, you might say, well, I don't plan to be a farmer, Simon. Simon, I don't plan to be a farmer, so it doesn't matter to me. All right, fine, doesn't matter to you, fine. Be that way. I'm just saying that there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. And I think the games would be more interesting if there was more of this interesting stuff. I mean, if they'd simulated, imagine if there was a world simulator advanced enough that, you know, a volcano erupts in the ocean, and then animals and plants slowly start colonizing it. Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, what if No Man's Sky was like that? Oh, No Man's Sky. The planets don't even move in No Man's Sky. Everything is just anyway. Let's not talk about it. Oh yes, I really think if someone can make that game, I think it will do well. Like you might assume that wow, that's way too complicated, right? I mean, I don't know, is it too hard for people? I really do think that game developers underestimate gamers. I think if somebody makes a realistic life simulation, I think it would be successful. Maybe, I'm not sure. See, a lot of these simulation games, some people kind of arrive at the conclusion that there's no game and therefore it's boring. Spore is an example. No Man's Sky is definitely an example. So Spore had this really kind of interesting procedurally generated worlds and procedurally generated creatures, and so that was kind of interesting. It's similar to the technology in No Man's Sky. And it was very interesting, but then the gameplay was very shallow. And I think a lot of people have come to the conclusion that, well, it's not sufficient to just have a simulation. You also need gameplay. And that is, I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong, but maybe I would propose that the simulation wasn't dense enough. I mean, even though it had some very interesting innovations, Spore, but there still wasn't enough to do. Like it needed to be denser. Like I think it's possible to not have gameplay, quote unquote gameplay, but if the simulation is complex enough and dense enough, then people will be able to do stuff in it anyway. And in Minecraft, the example is the mob trap. The mob farm is really the example where you create a dark room and you use water channels to push the mobs into a bit of lava at head level, at head height. So then the lava kills the creatures and drops the items on the ground where you collect. And so the mob farm really, I mean, it wasn't designed, it wasn't intended gameplay. But the mechanics of Minecraft was complex enough that the mob farm was possible. And so for a while, people had a lot of fun designing and building mob farms. It was a thing that people enjoyed doing because they could do it and because it was complex enough. And so, what I like getting back to like, I mean, the mob farm was not designed gameplay. It was not intended gameplay. You know what I mean? Like Notch did not intend for that to happen, but it was able to happen because the simulation was complex enough for that to be possible, right? Like the Minecraft as simple as it is was complex enough for that to be possible. And that was great. Mob traps are great. They're still great. And again, we come back to automation in Minecraft and the question of why Mojang seems to hate automation in Minecraft. We always come back to this. But like again, so the point I'm trying to make is that the problem was not that there's no intended gameplay. Like you know, if your conclusion is that a simulation is not enough and you need gameplay for a game to be interesting, or like you know design gameplay for again. So but then the mob trap is an example where that wasn't entirely true. That wasn't true because the simulation was actually enough. The gameplay emerged out of the mechanics of the simulation in the form of the mob trap. And that's incredible. That is quite incredible, right? It's quite good, quite amazing. But ever since then, in Minecraft at least, like there's been no other thing like the mob trap. I mean, there's redstone, but with everything else since then, there's always a missing piece. that makes automation incomplete. And even mob traps don't work as well as they used to because all the new mobs clog up the old mob traps, right? It was done on purpose, if I remember correctly. Like they deliberately wanted to make it so that you don't have to build a mob trap to be good in Minecraft. For some reason, they thought the mob trap was was anti-fun. I don't know who would come to that conclusion. I guess little kids who are not smart enough to build mob traps would come to that conclusion. But like there's no automation in farming. There's no turrets. So there's no automation in fighting monsters. There's no automation in resource harvesting. There's no automation in anything. Like there's pistons, but pistons don't automate. Pistons just push things around. So there's like pieces of automation, but not quite. I built an automatic chicken cooker back in my old world, and that was about as much automation as could be, like squeezed out of Minecraft. The idea that eggs will spawn chickens. So you put eggs in a dispenser, you launch the eggs out of the dispenser to create chickens. You let the chickens grow, and then when they grow, you drop the chickens onto a fire, so then it cooks them into cooked chickens for you, and that's like automatic meat for food. And that is about the limit of automation in farming in Minecraft. Like that, you can't do any better than that. And all the other stuff, like the wheat or the plant, the wheat, the carrot, the potatoes, the beetroots, you have to do all that. You have to do it by hand. There's no other way to do it except by hand. And so then the game is boring because of it, right? Because the game, like the simulation, is not complex enough to allow for emergent mechanics. And this is the opposite of what we concluded from the Spore debacle. And it was a debacle because it was hyped and then it didn't work. Like nobody really thought it was good. But there was a lot of hype. So the Spore debacle told us, or ostensibly it told us, that a simulation is not enough. That you need to design interesting gameplay. But I disagree with that. Like, I agree, but I also disagree. Like, I agree to the extent that if your simulation is like you can't do half. If your simulation is not complex enough, then yes, then you do need to design gameplay. Dude, Pig, I'm trying to eat lunch. Stop looking at me like that. Yeah, so, but if your simulation is so complex that you have these complex interactions and this complex machinery becomes possible, then you don't need gameplay. And Minecraft for a while looked like it could be that. It could be a world where people could have a lot of fun without set gameplay. And I suppose it was. For a while it was. And then Mojang kind of stopped doing that and tried to make it the other thing. So every time they add new content for you to explore, quote unquote explore, they are saying, alright, we're not gonna have this emergent gameplay. We're gonna tell you what the gameplay is. So like the last update added huskies and creatures in the cold biomes, and like bears or polar bears or whatever they were. I don't even remember what the patch notes are. So now your gameplay is to go find the polar bears and take some screenshots and post it on YouTube or something, whatever it is kids do these days with Minecraft. And that's it. and that's it. Like like so, and then you ask, well, like if you ask, well, how do the Huskies enable new machinery in Minecraft? The answer is they don't, right? Like how does any of the new content interact with existing content in a way that allows new machinery to be built? The answer is they don't. They just don't do anything of that sort. So now all the content is curated and intended and put in the game for you by Mojang for you to discover as is. And it's been so long since anyone has really invented a thing that did something that Mojang did not intend for you to do. Or not that they didn't intend it, they didn't even imagine it. Maybe the Iron Golem farm belongs in that category of things that I can get infinite Iron Golem automatically. So that belongs in the category of machines that does things that was not entirely intended. It's like the chicken cooker, the Iron Golem farm, the mob farm. But then there are so many other things in the game where it's just not possible to do anything of the sort. Mostly farming. What was I talking about? How did I get onto this topic? I forgot. uh, right, so the problem with No Man's Sky. Well, No Man's Sky, there's a lot of stuff, but none of the stuff interact. Right? Think about it. There's a lot of stuff, but none of the stuff interact. The planets don't even move. So like the animals, do the animals even eat? Do they eat each other? I guess they kind of do. Like the plants, do the plants take nutrients from the soil? Like are there volcanoes to add new islands? Like is there erosion to kind of turn existing islands or existing mountains into sand? So like there's a lot of stuff, but the stuff they're not active and they don't interact. And so then No Man's Sky becomes a lot of nothing. And again, you might conclude from the No Man's Sky debacle that like a game is not sufficient just to have a big randomly generated world, that you need to have designed gameplay. You might come to that conclusion when you look at the No Man's Sky debacle, but I would argue that it's because the universe is not complex enough. The universe is big enough, but it's not complex enough. And none of the things interact with any of the other things, and that's why it's so boring. Not because there's no gameplay, no intended gameplay. Although, if you're a game designer, you should probably design gameplay because that's your job. But I would say that's not the problem. What's a good example of this? I guess SimCity. SimCity is a good example of this. I mean, SimCity is a game, kind of. And SimCity is designed so that you start from a small town and you build like a bigger and bigger city. You get bigger and bigger buildings and more density, and so there's progression. There's an implied game because there's progression in SimCity. But SimCity is just a simulation, right? It's just a simulation. And oh crap, wrong thing. Do I even need to fill this in? I probably do. Let me just fill that in. So SimCity has does it have gameplay? It kind of doesn't, does it? SimCity kind of doesn't have gameplay. Not in the sense of... But SimCity, the simulation is complex enough.